Hello and welcome to The Football Word. I'm Doug Kyde. This is Zach Cox. Today we are doing a mini camp preview, not to be confused with our OTA preview, which we did 2 weeks ago.
Or our OTA preview that we're probably going to do again in a week or two.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, honestly, OTAs and minicamp are pretty much the same thing. I think that fans just have a better understanding of what minicamp is based on the name alone. OTA sounds like some kind of like weird SAT test for football players, whereas minicamp is minicamp. I think that if anything, they should almost just change the name of OTA to like voluntary camp or like fun camp.
Yeah,
or something.
OTAs always gets. I think it gives the impression that it's not. It's kind of more off-field workouts, kind of classroom stuff. But it really is basically all the rules for it, other than it being mandatory, are the exact same thing as minicamp.
Yeah, minicamp is mandatory.
Yes.
Or I guess OTAs is voluntary, minicamp is mandatory, so that means that we will see Alan Branch out there on the field, or we most likely will, unless he wants to skip that too, which seems like it would be counterproductive.
Yeah, and there's a fine structure if you do skip minicamp workouts. I believe it's like 10,000 for the first skipped, all the way up to 40,000. I think if you skip the third day.
Yes, so it would greatly behoove Alan Branch to show up, which I'm sure he will. I think that he just likes to spend that time at OTAs, hanging out with his family. He's been in the league for 10 years or so. So it's understandable that he does not want to do that because it's kind of pointless for defensive tackles anyway.
Yeah.
No contact, no tackling, no nothing. So so that's really what the difference between minicamp and OTAs is. It's pretty much exactly the same, but we will dive into this minicamp and take a look at some players that we want to watch during these practices. And the first one that I'm going to throw out there is DJ Foster, the Patriots' second-year running back. And he had a very good first OTA session that we were able to watch. He was catching some deep passes, looked like he was the same fast, shifty, jitterbug type of back that he was when we saw him last year. And the big key for him this offseason, well, I guess I'm going to get into two things here, but first of which is that last OTAs and minicamp, he was down with a hamstring injury. He got hurt almost right away, and that really carried on throughout training camp, where at the beginning of training camp, we still weren't getting a close look at him because that hamstring injury was still bothering him. So the fact that he is healthy this offseason is really huge for him, and we'll be able to see that speed, that quickness, that receiving ability all the way up until preseason as long as he stays healthy. The other thing for him, though, is that the backfield is a lot more crowded this year.
Yep.
Last year, there was kind of a direct path for him to make the roster, which he did for most of the season. This year, they're basically going to have to create a roster spot if they want to keep this guy around. So it will be very interesting. If he continues to be as good as he was at that first OTA, maybe they will create a roster spot for him, but it's an uphill battle for him to make this team.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle for him to make the team, and then even if he does make the team, it's going to be an uphill battle for him to actually see any significant playing time. I mean, because right now it's hard to imagine him unseating any of the top four people on that running back depth chart in Mike Gillislee, Rex Burkhead, James White, Dion Lewis. Right now, I think DJ Foster is the clear number 5 there, so he's going to have an uphill battle there. The guy I'm going to be watching, sort of different circumstances, Rex Burkhead. He's a guy who is going to make this team unless something disastrous happens. He's going to make the team, but we haven't really seen much of him yet. I mean, we've only been able to watch one OTA practice. He made a few catches in that session, but he didn't really stand out to me. I would say, I mean, not that he played poorly, he just didn't really, he didn't flash like DJ Foster did. And this is a guy who was really primarily a special teamer for a long time when he was with the Cincinnati Bengals. Kind of came into their offense a little bit this past year, but he's a guy that before he signed with the Patriots, apparently he received very significant interest from teams all around the league. There's a lot of people in this league who think that he's going to be a very good running back. And because he's more of a pass-catching back, we're going to be able to get to see a little bit of what he can do in these non-padded sessions, more so than a guy like Gillislee, who's more of a runner. So not worried about his potential of making the team, but I'm excited to see what he can bring up there.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that too. We'll see what he can do as a pass catcher. These practices this season are so disjointed. We saw an OTA session 2 Thursdays ago. nothing last week. Then we're getting these 3 practices Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then we're getting another one Monday, and then that will do it for us until training camp.
Late July.
So this is like a big stretch for us to see everything that we're basically going to see, because the 1.5 hour session that we caught 2 Thursdays ago, we gained a little bit off of it. We saw a little bit off of some of these guys, but when you're getting 1 out of however many OTAs they've had now at this point, 7 or so, you're not going to be able to glean that much. So minicamp is really
getting to
key
see the
for
3
this.
in a row too, I think, is going to be a real help. Once we get into training camp, it really helps to see how players either progress or regress on each day, and that's really hard to see when you see 1 practice and then you don't see anything for a week and a half.
Right.
You got to see those consecutive days. So this is going to be a really big week from an evaluation standpoint. I'm sure both from the team's perspective and from ours.
Yeah, and I was actually asked last week on the Adam Jones show on 98.5, what can you actually glean from these sessions? And honestly, you can. There's a lot that we can pick up from this, because this is the time that we identify players like Malcolm Butler, like Kenbrell Tompkins, like Zach Sudfeld, like Jonathan Jones, the guys who actually make the roster. Cravon LeBlanc last season, he didn't make the team, but he went on to be a pseudo starter for the Bears. And these are the names that we identify really early, and those are the undrafted guys, those hidden gems that do wind up doing something. So we're not out there standing in the rain for nothing during these sessions.
Hopefully less rain this week.
I don't know. It seems like it's going to be very cold and rainy tomorrow at least. But saying all of that, the next player that I'm going to be watching is Cyrus Jones, Patriots cornerback. He continued to have some struggles out in the rain as a punt returner. He was dropping some balls out there, got beat by Danny Amendola on about a 25-30 yard pass from, I believe it was Tom Brady out there. Not a great first session in front of the media. Like I said, though, they've had about 6 or 7 OTAs at this point, so maybe that was his worst practice of the entire spring. We're going to see a completely different player during these next 3 minicamp sessions, plus the OTA after that. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. But if he does continue to struggle like he did during that 1 OTA, then I think that we are talking about this guy potentially not making the roster, because there is a lot of competition there at cornerback with Jonathan Jones, Justin Coleman, the 3 undrafted free agents, DJ Killings, Dwayne Thomas, and Kenny Moore. Yep. So yeah, I mean, he was a late 2nd round pick. We've discussed this kind of ad nauseum at this point. He should make the roster, and it would basically have to be disastrous for him not to. But his rookie campaign was pretty disastrous, and that first OTA session that we saw wasn't much better. Yeah,
no, I would agree. I think he's got the most to prove here in this this whole spring and summer, really, all the way going up to final cuts in late August, early September, whatever that is. I think he's still going to be given the opportunity to prove that he should be on this team. I mean, I guess everybody technically is, but I think the Patriots are going to give him, just because of the fact that he was such a high draft pick, comparatively speaking, compared to their other draft picks that year. I think he's going to be given the opportunity, but right now he's got an uphill climb, because as we saw in the first OTA session, Jonathan Jones was in there with that first defense as the 3rd cornerback. Who knows if it's going to stay that way? I think Eric Rowe probably, if I had to rank all the cornerbacks in this team, Eric Rowe would be 3rd above Jonathan Jones and Cyrus Jones and Justin Coleman and all them. But with what Jonathan Jones brings to the team right now, both on special teams and on defense, he seems to have sort of bumped Cyrus Jones out of that spot. But so I'm going to be looking to see what he can bring to the table, if he can keep continuing this his upward trajectory here. And also the 3 undrafted guys that you mentioned. It seems like every year the Patriots bring in so many undrafted defensive backs that seems like every year there's at least 1 or 2 of them that kind of flash. And even if they don't end up making the team, they at least give us something to talk about all summer. And DJ Killings, I think, is the kind of the cream of the crop of those 3. So I'm interested to see what we see from him.
Yeah, as soon as these guys start making some plays out there, that's when you really start to identify them. That's what we saw from Malcolm Butler way back when he was a rookie during these OTA sessions. When cornerbacks are getting their hands on the ball, they're going to stand out, and that doesn't only stand out to us, it stands out to the team as well, to the coaches. So we'll start to see that. I'd also like to see some of these safeties. I'm still kind of excited about David Jones, Jason Thompson. Those guys are great athletes. So we'll see how they do.
Yeah, and I mean, with Jordan Richards by no means a lock to make this team, there's a chance that one of those guys could vault up into a roster spot if they prove themselves.
Absolutely, and they should have plenty of opportunity to shine too, because Deron Harmon was out of the first OTA. We'll see if that holds up. A couple other guys who were out during that session were Dante Hightower and Malcolm Mitchell. So we'll see if they take the field. It seems kind of unlikely. If they miss that OTA, then they probably won't be out here too.
Yeah. Harmon was there, but he wasn't participating.
Right.
He was doing some kind of conditioning work off by himself.
Yep.
So seems to be dealing with some sort of injury that that's kind of not hindering him enough to keep him off the field entirely, but keeping him out of full team drills and whatnot.
Yeah, so we will see with that. The Patriots do currently have a full 90-man roster, but it's always kind of worth looking to see who else is out there on the open market. There are still plenty of older free agents out there, and what kind of struck up this conversation was the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs semi-surprisingly released Jeremy Maclin, and I don't think the Patriots are really going to be the prime destination for him, since they already have 6 receivers who might as well be locks to make the roster. But going through this list, what's one player that you noticed or really stood out to you that could really help this team if the Patriots either suffer some injuries or if they just feel like they need some better depth at a certain position?
Well, you see some big names. Sorry, I promise I'm not texting here. My laptop's in the shop, so I'm going iPhone today. But you see some relatively big names on this list. Obviously, there's the Nick Mangold, Elvis Dumervil, Gary Barnidge, Alteron Werner, Darrelle Revis, Paul Kruger, guys who have been. Some of them have been superstars in the past, and some of them have just been above-average contributors. I mean, Gary Barnidge was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago, the tight end from the Browns. He was released earlier this offseason after they drafted David Njoku. He hasn't found a new team yet. A lot of guys that have at least some name recognition in here. I don't look at any of them and really think this is a guy the Patriots should really go out and get before training camp starts up. But there are definitely some candidates if they suffer an injury or if one of their players doesn't perform up to par. How about you? What did you notice from this list?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's certain positions that the Patriots have a greater need at. I guess safety could be considered one of those. Yeah. If the Patriots aren't happy with Jordan Richards, if they feel like they need a better fourth safety behind Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, and Daron Harmon, then there are some interesting names out there. Issa Abdul-Quddus, former Dolphins. Safety is a free agent right now. Jairus Byrd is a free agent. Marcus Gilchrist. Those are 3 players that I'm actually almost kind of surprised are still out there, just because they're pretty talented players, had some decent seasons last year. They're getting on the older side, though. So, I mean, those are guys that probably won't be that happy being a backup. But if the Patriots really do feel strongly that they need a better backup strong safety, then those are some guys who can do some of that, can cover a little bit, can play near the box. Linebacker is another position that, the Patriots could feel the need to increase their depth a little bit. I don't know how necessary it is, but if they're kind of looking at Shea McClellan as not being potentially the answer, if they're still looking for a guy who could potentially fill in as a starter, Perry Riley is out there, DeAndre Levy's out there, C.O. Moore is out there. Obviously now these names are very exciting, but I guess those are 2 positions that I'm looking at little bit that the Patriots could help themselves out a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you had to name 2 positions, those would be the ones that I guess you could say are the shallowest on this team. They do have some high-end, top-level talent with guys like McCourty and Hightower. Yeah. But we've been talking for a while about how we don't really know who's going to be that next starting the second starting linebacker next to Dante Hightower. Yeah. There are probably some guys out here that are just as good as Kyle Van Noy, Shea McClellan, Elandon Roberts. Right. So it's all going to depend on how the rest of these few weeks play out, and then going into training camp.
Yeah, and I think that one name that is kind of interesting that we didn't mention as players to watch during mini camp or even OTAs, because it's not a position that's great to gauge, but I think that Shea McClellan's going to have a pretty interesting offseason here, just because he's due over $3 million in 2017. I don't believe that a lot of that is guaranteed, so he would be a player that's pretty easy to cut. And if he's not going to earn a starting role behind Dante Hightower, and if guys like Derek Rivers and Dietrich Wise really kind of emerge at defensive end, then he's a player who could possibly be a surprise cut, I would say, if a guy like Harvey Longy emerges and proves that he deserves a roster spot. If the Patriots feel like Jonathan Freeney can help the team over Shea McClellan, he's a guy that I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people expected miracles out of the Patriots in his first season. That, okay, if any team can turn around Shea McClellan, it's going to be the Patriots. he wasn't very good last year, to be completely honest, and there was very few instances where he really stood out as a pass rusher or in coverage. I guess he was decent as a run defender, but even that, I mean, I don't remember a lot of Shea McClellan plays last year, and he got a decent chunk of playing time.
Decent as a field goal blocker, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I do think he's kind of...
And that play was banned.
Yep, that's banned. Sorry, Shea.
What do you do now?
But yeah, I do think that we kind of fall victim sometimes when a team wins the Super Bowl and is as dominant throughout most of the season as the Patriots are. I think guys kind of get their status elevated a little bit. I mean, we're guilty of that too. I think that there are times we look at players and think that they were better last year than they actually were individually. Right. Guys like Shea McClellan and Kyle Van Noy, players like that, who were a part of a very good defense, but I think both of them could be improved upon. Right. I guess I'll say that. So yeah, I don't think that's definitely still a question mark in there.
Yeah, and the fact that the Patriots did add Kyle Van Noy midway through the season, he's a player who's quite frankly pretty similar to Shea McClellan, just in the fact that they can play linebacker, they can play edge defender. So just the fact that the Patriots felt the need that they had to add Kyle Van Noy there at the trade deadline. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see about Mr. McClellan, but he's not exactly a fan favorite, so I don't think many Patriots fans would be weeping if the Patriots did decide that $3 million would be better.
I guess elsewhere. Now that you put it that way, apart from his blocked kick and the fumble return he had against Miami, he wasn't really. I remember we were talking like halfway through the season. We felt like we hadn't said his name once through the first 8 or 9 weeks of the season. So, yeah, he's definitely a guy that has to kind of elevate his status a little bit, especially because he came into league as a relatively highly touted prospect. So
good athlete too, and he hasn't. I mean, he showed that on the. I dropped my phone. Whatever. He showed that on that blocked field goal, but other than that, not a whole lot there. Anything else from you that you're kind of looking forward to this week, or anything on minicamp that you want to throw out there?
I don't know. I think we kind of hit it. It's gonna be again. It's gonna be nice to see 3 consecutive days of practice. Really, just see how the flow goes over each of these days. See whether anybody whether the starting groups, the position groups change at all over the course of this week, and just things like that. I mean, this is the last chance really we're going to have, other than the one OTA session next Monday. Then Patriots are off for 5 weeks, so it's going to be if we're going to gather any intel, we've got to do it now. So it's going to be a big week for them from that regard.
I'm just glad that last week is over. There wasn't a whole lot going on last week. There was almost nothing going on last week. So now we actually have some football practices to watch. They are not OTAs, they are minicamp, which are much different, as we explained at the top of the show. But the next time we will talk to you is Thursday on Between the Tackles, where we will discuss everything that we saw at minicamp with Michaela Vanava. Also check out Nesson.com. Throughout the week, we will have OTA observations, attendance, stories on all the players. So keep it on Nesson.com for everything.